Touchdown Tampa Bay. You're listening to the Pewtercast.
Welcome to the Pewtercast. I am Brent Allen, your host, and this is our final thoughts episode for the Bucs versus Eagles. This is the show where we're going to be diving back into the Eagles game one final time to see any of our opinions and reactions from the instant cast have changed. And we're going to grade out the team as we put this one to bed and turn towards Monday Night Football when our beloved Buccaneers will take on the Steelers. But I'm not alone. Oh, no. Joining me, as always, is a guy who is always on the forefront of ideas, only to see those really cool ideas get ripped off by the national media. Ren Daxt, how's it going tonight, my friend?
What's going on?
Do you know what I'm talking about? So listen, you were the first person to go live on the air dressed up as Ryan Fitzpatrick, dressed up as Deshaun Jackson. And the next morning, this little show called Good Morning Football, they ripped on your idea, and then other people across the nation ripped on your idea. And Ren, I'm just saying, man, we've talked about this before. We always seem to have it first, you know?
We don't always seem to have it first, but there's a lot of things that we do have first. And, and they tend to fall in those things where it's just because we just happen to do a show first.
Right.
It's not like it's breaking news or we started this trend or we weren't the first. If I would have came out and I go, you know what, I think if we would have done it last week, and I said, I think Fitzpatrick should dress like this if he wins the Eagles game. Now that'd be having it first, but I thought it was a fun idea. People were commenting on it in the YouTube chat of our Instacast, our live show that we did Sunday night, and everyone seemed to think it was really funny and a good idea. And like you said, I seem to be not the only one that thought it'd be really cool and funny to dress up like Fitzpatrick and act like nothing was wrong.
Mm-hmm. Stay humble. Just stay humble. Yeah.
Can't change who you are.
Well, Ren, with all that said, let's waste no more time getting into the show because we've got a big show planned for the folks out there today. In today's episode, I already mentioned we're going to be diving back into this Eagles game to give our final thoughts, and then, Ren, we're going to grade out the game at the end of the show. We're also going to follow up this episode later this week with the second part of this episode, which will be your final thoughts. Our fellow friends, fellow fans, you guys have been sending in those emails and those tweets and everything, plus a couple of iTunes reviews. We'll get to that in the second half of the show. But before we get to all of that, we have a very special guest on the show today, Ren. For the first time ever, he's a first-time guest here to the Pewtercast, Mr. Pat Donovan of WDAE and 98 Rock. He's going to be joining us, and he'll be talking about football. We'll be talking about football with the Buccaneers. And then he was also able to be in attendance today at the official announcement of that player-led social justice initiative. So we'll get all the details of that we can as well. It should be a good show. So without further ado, Ren, let's get into it. So, Pat, you are with WDAE and 98 Rock. You cover the Buccaneers down there in Tampa. So, I guess just kind of kicking this off, man. Lots of stuff happening with the Bucs. Lots of fun stuff here over the last 2 weeks. I know that you were at training camp quite a bit. Saw lots there to be excited for. Man, what's got you amped up about the team this year? And really, are you surprised by what you're seeing based on what you saw in training camp?
Well, they looked really good in training camp, and they looked pretty good during the preseason as well. But, you know, when we did our predictions before the year began, kind of going through game by game and doing our best at guessing. And it's funny, 2 years ago, we both were within a game or had the perfect and still got almost every game wrong. And I feel like that could happen again because I somehow, when I look back after my predictions, had the Bucs going 10-6, but I also had them losing the first 2 games of the year. But I had Pittsburgh on Monday night being the first victory. So I'd absolutely have to say I'm surprised by not just the fact that they beat New Orleans, but how they beat New Orleans and then to come back and beat the defending Super Bowl champions. And I know they're missing a lot of players, but look, so are the Buccaneers. And they went and beat Philadelphia on Sunday, too. So, yeah, I'm absolutely surprised by what I've seen so far, and it's been fun to watch.
Hey, Pat, it's Ren. Let's get to what I'm dying to talk about. You have a new show on Sundays. You've got 3 heavy hitters with you, Rick Stroud from The Times, Jenna Lane from ESPN, and Trevor Sikkema from Pewter Report. Can you sort of walk us through, like, how this came about and, you know, whose idea it was and, you know, run people who haven't heard the show, tell them what time it's on and sort of what it's all about.
Absolutely. It's called The Insiders, which, to be 100% honest, is not a name I'm in love with just because I've never necessarily considered myself an insider, right? Like, I feel like people come to me for analysis, people come to me for my opinion, but the reality is I'm not getting breaking news very often. The Bucs aren't leaking stuff to me before other people, so I've never really been comfortable with the term insiders. That said, I do think it's a hell of a show. Rick Stroud does a great job, obviously, from the Tampa Bay Times. You mentioned ESPN's Jenna Lane and obviously Trevor Sikkema from Pewter Report. The show is the brainchild of my boss, John Momola, who wanted to have a roundtable type show, a sports reporters type of show, focusing on, you know, the NFL and the Buccaneers every Sunday morning leading into our football coverage for the day. And 2 weeks in, I think it's going really well. We're having a lot of fun, and I think it'll get better every week as we kind of feel each other out, because while we've all done radio in some sense in the past, 4 people in a room is not always easy, especially with kind of shorter segments, because we only have 2-minute commercial breaks and 8 segments during the show. But the thing is, we get after each topic pretty quickly and pretty hard, and I think so far it's been a good product.
Yeah, I agree. Like, you know, I was one of the people on Twitter that asked you, I'm like, when, like, what time is this? Or, you know, and you're like, you made a joke. You're like, are you like trolling me? Because this has been everywhere. I guess I just missed it. And I've set my alarm. I'm not an early riser, but I've set my alarm early the past 2 Sundays to catch it. So you said they're all in studio. Is that how it's going to, like, even when they're on the road? Because I know Jenna is going to travel, of course. Rick is going to travel, of course. I know Trevor traveled week 1. So is the show like, do you guys do it like on a Thursday or like sort of walk?
Yeah. Truth be told, because of, like you said, those guys do travel. So we can't do it live on a Sunday morning. We do actually record the show on Friday. And if you don't feel like setting your alarm, we love having people listen live, right? But if you don't want to set your alarm, it's actually usually on DAE on demand on iHeartRadio on Saturday night, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Which that's really helpful because a lot of our listeners are out of market people to the Tampa Bay area. I mean, you know, just looking at our download number, it's at least 25%. You know, of our people are certainly out, and I'm actually an out of market guy as well. So, you know, I'm not, like, truth be told, I'm not as familiar with the radio or the TV personalities there in Tampa, but I'm trying to get more familiar with you guys, you know, through these different apps like iHeartRadio. So glad to know that that's out there, because I saw it and was like, man, I wish I'd be able to hear that so I could check it out. So that's good to know.
Yeah, we do. We podcast it every week. It goes on. Again, it's DAE on demand on iHeartRadio. As long as you follow us on Twitter at 620WDAE on Twitter. My boss is tweeting out a lot of stuff about the show, when it's live, when it's podcasted, all that stuff throughout the week. So very easy to find for those that want to hear it.
All right. Well, let's talk about the question that's going to dominate sports talk radio, Twitter, all the Buccaneer beat writers outlets, because Fitzpatrick is playing so well, even though everything could change in the Steelers game. But you know you're going to talk about it. Everyone's going to talk about it. You're in the media room. So, you know, you're in the press, but you're in the media room at One Buck Place. You're in the press box, you know, at Sunday's game, the Philly game. there has to be some sort of vibe or overall feeling with all the beat writers and the and the guys from 620 and the people from Channel 8, Channel 12, or excuse me, 10, 13. They're all up there in that press box. What's the overall vibe of what people think is going to happen as of today when Jameis Winston's suspension is done?
I think most people believe that sooner or later, this has to be Jameis's team, right? Because they have to find out if he is the future. Because I think there's still some question mark there, especially with everything that's happened and the fact that he hasn't necessarily been a superstar in this league. Although I think if you look at the numbers and what a lot of quarterbacks have done early in their career at young ages, he stacks up pretty well on the field. But I do think there's some question about whether or not he's the future or long term, right? They certainly haven't given him a long-term contract. I don't think he's given them a reason to just yet. So I think at the end of the day, sooner or later, you have to find that out. Although you do have him coming back next season on that fifth year rookie deal. But at the end of the day, the one thing we do know is Ryan Fitzpatrick is not the future. I feel like Fitzmagic has an expiration date. I feel like it has everywhere he's been. This isn't the first time we've seen this, maybe to this extent, but this isn't the first time we've seen this from Ryan Fitzpatrick. I will say, as long as he's playing as well as he's playing right now, the first quarterback to throw for over 400 yards and 4 touchdowns in consecutive games to start a season ever, as long as he's playing that kind of football, I think it's tough to pull the plug. But I think eventually most people expect that sooner or later Jameis Winston is still the quarterback of this team, by the end of the season and moving forward, as they try to figure out, is he the guy that you want to give a long-term $100+ million contract to be your franchise quarterback?
I'm telling you, Pat, I'm stealing Fitzmagic has an expiration date, and I'm tweeting it out right now.
Hey, listen.
Okay, I don't mind.
Fitzmagic also now has a trademark, apparently. I think Minka Fitzpatrick had his guys tried to trademark it earlier today. I think I saw that going out and around. Pat, let me ask you some kind of news that broke today. I don't know if you've heard or not. I'm going to assume that you have. The Uber driver has now officially filed a lawsuit against Jameis. The timing seems really amazing, given that Jameis is just about to make his comeback. Is there any talk in the media room or in around, like, what's the feeling about what is this? Is this going to spin us for a whole nother loop and a whole nother cycle, or are we going to, are we going to be able to get past this whole thing and just move on and just worry about football again? Or, any idea on what this is doing,
This is a well-crafted question, Brent.
Yes, it's that breaking.
Well, certainly, those of us in the media, since this news have broken, we haven't been together. We won't be together again until Thursday as the Bucs have tomorrow off because of the long week and victory. It becomes Victory Tuesday, Wednesday, because they're playing on Wednesday on Monday night. But
right.
I do think this is a thing that it's not going to be pervasive because it's not going to be answered. It's not going to be addressed. And there's only so many times that people are going to throw the question out there to hear that it's something that's not going to be talked about again, right? So I think that we do, at least within the media room, within the football team, within the season, tend to focus back on football, while this will play out most likely, I believe, in the background. I was suspicious of this thing before Jameis apologized. And to me, I said when Jameis apologized, to me, that's an admission of guilt, because when you're Jameis and you've been through what Jameis has been through, in my opinion, you can't apologize for something like this if you didn't do it. Right. That said, this whole circumstance of when this information is coming out again, as you said, it's interesting that it's right now. The fact that she has the same attorney as Erica Klinsman, the wording that was used today by her attorney, right. There's something weird. There's just something weird. Yeah. And I don't want to be an apologist. If the kid did what he's accused of, and it's hard for me to believe he didn't do anything wrong when he apologized, it's not good. But this seems really, I don't want to say politically motivated, but it really seems like someone's trying to make a point and someone's trying to go after somebody. And something about it feels dirty, man. I don't know how else to say it. Something about it feels really dirty.
I got to tell you, Pat, I 100% agree with you. It's, and I'm at a point now where I don't want to minimize what happened. I don't mean to minimize any of the allegations or the seriousness of any of that, but truth be told, I'm just tired of talking about it. And I just want to get back to football. And, I want my biggest concern to be whether or not Jameis is throwing interceptions and fumbling the ball versus his touchdowns, not, all this other stuff that's going around. And I'm with you. It's something certainly seems off, and I don't even know that it's necessarily from the Uber driver herself. But we'll wait and see how wait and see how all that plays out. There was some other things, and kind of let's turn this kind of, I think, more to a more positive note and a more happy note. And a big reason why we got you on the show tonight. Earlier today, as we record this show, several of the players came out, and it was announced last week that they would do it, but today was like the big announcement. Several of the players are announcing this player-led social justice initiative. And, we still don't know really too much about it. At least I don't. I got to watch a very, very little bit of that, the video from the press conference. I know that Deshaun Jackson, G-Mac, Ali, and Donovan, and then quote unquote several other players are kind of leading the charge on this. But you got to be there. You got to be there for the announcement, and it sounds like you had some really good things to say about it. So, man, take us through it. Take us through the announcement. Tell us what this is, and give Buck fans a little bit more insight into what's going on here.
Yeah, I wish I had the actual information in front of me as far as some of the other things that they have planned, because they do. I know one of the things involves guys who've gotten out of prison and getting them back into work. There's going to be a lot of different things that these players are going to be involved in as far as from a team standpoint. But the really cool thing is they're now given the opportunity to go out and kind of do some things on their own. And one thing that Gerald McCoy said today was, now it's on us. We've been given this opportunity, and now it's on us. And what the Buccaneers and Darcy Glazer-Kasowitz through the Buccaneer Foundation announced today is that anything the Buccaneer players do to give back to the community through this social justice initiative, the Buccaneers are going to match that up to $1 million, right? So depending on what players do, the Bucs are going to jump right in there as well. And today,
Pat, really, if I can stop you there,
getting together. Sorry?
I was going to say, if I could stop you there just to clarify that, because I did have a question about the $1 million match. Is that up to $1 million match per thing that the players do, or is that like kind of an aggregate total up to $1 million with what everybody does combined? Do you know?
I'll say they didn't specify, but I would imagine that it is in total, right?
Okay.
And listen, knowing the Buccaneers, knowing the Glazer family, as I've gotten to a little bit over the last handful of years covering this football team, if it goes over that a little bit, because guys are doing so much good, I would not be at all surprised. And, if anything, I would probably expect that they would continue to go above and beyond that, right? But like Gerald McCoy said today, it is kind of on the players. And this is the first step. And, Mayor Bob Buckhorn was there and talked about how there's a lot of issues in this country right now with, policing and the way that some of the public views the police. And as Mayor Bob Buckhorn said, to an extent, a lot of that, a lot of the issues between trust between police and the community has come in communities of color. And that's something that, whether it is current Buccaneers or even former Buccaneers like wide receiver Frank Murphy, whose charity I'm actually on the board for, there are a lot of guys that are trying to do things to bridge that gap between the community and the police. And I think today was a step for that, where Gerald and some of the other players, they were able to talk to the police. They were able to ask questions of the police to try to understand better where the police came from. And then what's really cool is they actually get to go through live action training scenarios to see what kind of things the police go through. And Gerald, he was joking about it, but it was also a sense of understanding. He's like, I missed, so I got stabbed. During his training exercise, he was stabbed because, he wasn't accurate when he tried to, shoot the guy that he had to shoot in the training scenario. So I think it was a good opportunity for players to understand police and what they go through on a day-to-day basis better, and for the police to be able to connect with them. And, as a couple of the players talked about today, especially Gerald, they understand that they are role models, and that if they have a better relationship with police, if they have a line of communication with police, hopefully the young fans in some of these communities that have had so many issues will take that step as well.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool that one of the 4 people that, were on the board there was Deshaun Jackson. And, he's been talked about all through training camp by Coach Cutter about how he stepped up as a leader. He's having, obviously, an on-fire first 2 games, him and Fitzpatrick. So I'm going to sort of spin this into a football question. It'll be the last one from me. Who has been sort of an unsung hero for you? Like, we know Evans is has 2 touchdowns. Godwin has 2 touchdowns. O.J. Howard's look great. Of course, let's talk about Deshaun Jackson and Fitzy. Who are some guys that, and if you want to lean on some things you've heard in the press box or at One Buck, go ahead as well, that have been, hey, this guy here, he's also a really important cog of the wheel. And he's not getting a lot of recognition, an unsung hero, if you will.
I think offensively it's almost tough, right? Because everything is going so well. It's like
right.
You point to someone, they're playing well, right? I mean, seriously, on the offensive side of the football, it's just things are going that well so far. I think defensively, I'm shocked that I'm going to say this right now because I said during the preseason that Ryan Smith was not an NFL corner. He got beat by a rookie tight end from Miami. I'm drawing a blank on the kid's name, but in the first preseason game, he got beat so badly by a tight end. I'm like, if you can't cover a rookie tight end in this league, who the hell can you cover? And I said he wouldn't make the football team. And I said I didn't think he was an NFL corner. He didn't play great in game 1, but listen, nobody did because they played Drew Brees and they played Michael Thomas. And that offense is just stupid, although Cleveland's defense had a pretty good week against them this week. But he didn't look great in week 1, but nobody did. But he had a fantastic game. And as Dirk Cutter said after the game, kind of the game of his career on Sunday, the best game of his career, and a game that, they really needed that because they had no Brent Grimes. They had no Vernon Hargrave, who obviously be out for the season. This is a kid that I did not have any expectations for, let alone high expectations for. Came out and played a great game against Philadelphia on Sunday. And I think he deserves a ton of recognition for that because, again, he's a guy that he's been beaten up a lot and fairly so. But if he can continue to do what he did against Philadelphia, and part of that is they don't really have explosive receivers on that football team, right? As long as Alshon Jeffries isn't on the field, they're not necessarily explosive. And I think that was a good thing for Ryan Smith. But the way he stepped up on Sunday, I think you got to give him a lot of credit. And in general, that secondary, right? When you talk about the fact that, like I just said, those 2 starting corners are out, MJ Stewart and Carlton Davis. They've been beaten, but they're rookies, and they're going to get beaten again. But again, they're in there and they're competing in ways that you really shouldn't have to expect rookies to compete. You talk about Chris Conte going out on Sunday, and Jordan Whitehead coming in and playing pretty well and having one of the bigger hits of the game. They've got some young players in that secondary that are really stepping up, and I think if anybody, those guys right now through the first 2 might be a little bit of the unsung heroes of this football team.
Yeah, I agree. And we're going to get into, Ren and I are going to get into the second half of the show later tonight, kind of about our final thoughts. And I only really have one, and it's that I'm super proud of that secondary and those rookies and how they've stepped up. And, we'll get into that a little bit more later. If I could jump back to the social justice thing, and I think I'm going to lean on your knowledge here a little bit, Pat. Obviously this is something that is a player response to the kneeling thing, and the kneeling thing is not something we've dealt with a ton here in Tampa. There's been a couple of little one-off incidences last year, but it's nothing that's been a big thing here. But these are players that are actually, taking that next step, so to speak, beyond a protest and actually doing something about it. Is this the first of its kind in the NFL that you know of? Or is this something that's been modeled maybe with a few of the other organizations out there? Do you know?
As far as from an organizational standpoint, I know the Chicago Bears, I actually saw an announcement from them on Twitter. I actually ribbed them a little bit because they announced that they were going to, through their players and their organization, spend, I think it was $500,000 in money towards social justice initiatives. And I kind of tweeted back at them and said, "Good job, Bears. But just so you know, the Buccaneers offered to match their players up to $1 million." And I attached the little Dr. Evil sticking his pinky up to his face meme because, just for fun. But, I do believe this is something we'll probably see, maybe not league-wide, maybe not every team, But I think we'll see a lot of this. And I think it's a really good thing because, part of the conversation, I think for a lot of fans, and especially fans that are really offended by this, is so many people will say to you, well, these guys, they'll bitch and they'll moan and they'll complain and they'll protest, but they don't actually do anything. And I think that, it's easy to say that, but if you take a look, there's really a lot of guys across the league that are doing good in their community. And they may not all be related to social injustice, but at the end of the day, we criticize athletes a lot for not getting involved and for not doing things and for complaining and all this. But when you think about people with their means, and maybe not even necessarily to their extent, but if you think about, doctors or lawyers or, to get to their level of wealth, actors and musicians, you rarely hear. And I'm not to say that people in those realms don't do good either, but I don't think they do more good than professional athletes. And I think professional athletes get a lot more criticism than, despite the good that they do. So I think this is a great thing. I hope more people see it. I hope more people realize that it isn't just about protests, and a lot of guys are doing things, and a lot of guys are trying to make an impact. And you know what? I understand that kneeling during the national anthem offends a lot of people. It actually offends me. I'm disgusted by it. I hate the idea of men kneeling during the national anthem. I don't want to say it makes me sick, but it makes me really uncomfortable. What also makes me really uncomfortable is the fact that I've had a lot of black men in my life for my whole life that will tell me I don't know what it's like to be a black man, that will tell me that they're not treated the same as we are. And the reality is, if you think they are, you're probably naive. And as much as, and this is what I said and what I wish, frankly, our president could say, when I watch the national anthem, whether I'm at a game or whatever, I will stand there and I beam with pride, right? I do. I beam with pride because I love this country. I'm very patriotic. It bothers me so much that some of these men feel like because, in their opinion, black men have been marginalized in our country, that they don't feel comfortable to stand next to me and beam with pride. And I would so much rather understand those men and find out what I have to do to make them stand next to me and beam with pride, rather than be angry at them, rather than just assume that they're bad people. I would rather understand them and find out what I have to do to make them want to stand next to me. And just imagine for a split second where we might be today if our president said that.
It's definitely something, and that is
here, Pat
well
Donovan.
Said.
Here, sir.
Yeah, very, very well said. All right, well, one fun question to send us out on, Pat. Did I see out there?
Have you practiced that speech?
So did I see out there somewhere that you actually got to participate in some of those training drills that the players did earlier today? And if so, how did you do?
All right. Well, you guys, if you've ever listened to the Pat and Aaron show, you know that I'm pretty much a goofball in just about every instance. I kind of can't help myself. So serious or not, I usually approach everything like that. So here's the thing. The players got to go through like live action drills. We didn't get to do that because there was training that had to be done and no time for losers like me to get that kind of training. But what we did get to do is a exercise where there was a video and the video could react based, somebody running a computer makes it react, but could react based on what you're saying. So I did go through an exercise where me and another member of the media were basically police, and we're combating this criminal who, well, not even criminal. On the video, you make a traffic stop. The guy gets out of the car and puts a gun to his own head. And this is the scenario that we're being run through. And of course, we're both, because you have to kind of act it out in the room with all these other media members laughing at you, which is fine. And we're both kind of put the gun down, sir. But finally, the guy says, I don't care anymore. So I said, sir, I don't care either, but please put the gun down, which again, probably not the right response. And after my counterpart had again asked the guy to put the gun down, he actually did drop the gun. And because I wanted to just know what it felt like, I shot him.
So, are you protecting
for the record, I wouldn't have shot him in real life, and I'm glad I said all the things I just did about the anthem, so that nobody thinks that I did it for any other reason. I'm just saying, I had to know what it felt like. I had to shoot him.
right.
Little Westworld going on over here. Well, Pat, why don't you take a minute for anybody out there who may not know how to get a hold of you, or you already said that you have the DAE on demand for your show, but tell people out there how they can follow you and get a hold of you, out there on the internet and stuff.
Absolutely. And DAE on demand is kind of where we podcast all of our interviews from the whole station. If you're just looking for my goofy ass, you can actually search on iHeartRadio for the Pat and Aaron Show. Also, our show is on Twitter as a show, although not as interactive as me. You can search at Pat and Aaron Show. I'm at Pat Donovan Radio because, as you mentioned, I also do 98 Rock on the weekends on Saturday night. Pat Donovan Radio on Instagram as well. And that's about it.
Welcome back to the Pewtercast. It is time for our final thoughts and grades, Ren, as we go into this. And this is the part of the show where, hey, listen, we've already given a lot of our thoughts. We got to talk about this during the Instant Cast. That was a fun show. Of course, going live on YouTube, we already referenced that a little bit earlier in the show. You kind of dressed up in a little Fitzmagic outfit. Halloween came a little early. But we had a really great conversation. Lots of people call in. If you guys haven't heard that show yet, chances are you actually probably have, because that show, Ren, I announced it on Twitter earlier today, that show is officially the fastest downloaded episode, the most downloads in the first 24 hours that we've ever had here on the Pewtercast. I don't want to say it's blown other shows out of the water, but it's doing really, really well. So
I'm glad you clarified that, because the tweet just said it's the fastest downloaded show. And I'm like,
yeah.
Okay, so what, you have better bandwidth? Like, you didn't put in the 24 hours. I'm like, what is that? I knew what you meant, because, I get to look at the stats too now. Thank you. But I was like, yeah, okay. It's just kind of one of those things, like someone comes up and asks you, hey, do you know where the bathroom is? And you just go, yes, I do, and walk away. It's like, I know what you mean, but that's not what you said.
Right. I keep track of the episodes in two ways. One is how many downloads they get in the first 24 hours, and that ranks the fastest side. And then there's just most downloaded period, because some people still go back and listen to the old shows, and that's
always
cool
shocked
when they do that.
About how like you'll go and look and say, oh, look at that, we got like 1,600 downloads today, and then you look at the latest episode and it only got like 900. And it's like,
well, where'd the other 700 come from? Right.
Yeah. It's like, wow. All right.
And then you look at like the next one, and it's only like about 300. And then, it goes down from there. And all of a sudden it's 4 for episode 2. You're like, wow. Okay. All right. It's anyway, all of that said, most of you guys probably have heard the show by now, but if you haven't, go back into the podcast feed. It's right there. You guys can just download it and listen to it. Those are our immediate reactions, Ren, coming right out of the game. But now we've had a little bit of time to soak. We've had a little bit of time. You've gone back and watched your game film. You've assigned your DAC stats, which is really cool. So I put the question to you first, my friend. Has anything changed? What are your final thoughts as we put this game to bed?
Well, you talked about it a little bit, and I'm going to probably stealing your thunder. But you talked a little bit about, to Pat, was that secondary.
Yeah.
They did give up a lot of yards in the Philly game, but for at one point it was MJ Stewart, and I think I said this on the Instacast. It was MJ Stewart, Whitehead. Davis was out, and they had the guy that was only there for 3 days, Marcus Williams.
Right.
Yeah, and Ryan Smith was the other corner, who had a great game, but if you would have said that before the game, say, hey, halfway through the third quarter, this is our starting defensive backfield, you would have been like, oh my God, we're in serious trouble.
Well, even back that up a little bit, because I think you said you had Jordan Whitehead. Jordan Whitehead back as a safety, obviously the rookie, and then the rookie corners are the new guy who's been here, for less than 3 days. So yeah, that whole group.
Yeah, it was Stewart and Carlton and Smith at one point,
right? And
then Carlton goes down, and I'm thinking they move Smith outside, they bumped Justin Evans to nickel, and probably go Isaiah Johnson safety, because it's the safety position for us away from the ball. You sort of have the least responsibilities. Kind of just sort of playing center field, not a lot of things can go wrong. I guess is what I'm trying to say. But, they decided to go with Marcus Williams. Only been in camp for like 3 days. And just like they did with Carl Nassib week 1 in New Orleans. And, he came up, we talked a little bit about it, but he made some, came up and made some big tackles on third down and, got the Eagles to punt the ball. So, he did fine as well. So I guess that's my biggest one. I do have a few here.
Well, before you go on to that,
yeah.
Just wanting to kind of bounce off that a little bit with speaking of Carl Nassib and Mike Williams, I got to tell you, I'm kind of a little bit shell shocked. I think last year from the camp edition, the camp free agent signing that we had in TJ Ward, and how big of an absolute bust that turned out to be. But with these two guys coming in, and these guys aren't super big names. I know Carl Nassib got a little bit of play from Hard Knocks being up in Cleveland this year.
Yeah, where they're Riley Bulla.
Yeah, and but both of these guys have come down, and I mean, I'm not saying that they're knocking anything out of the park, but they're certainly contributing and they're certainly doing well. So, I'm glad to see that some of these late camp or post camp signings, are kind of working out a little bit for the Buccaneers, and these guys are able to come in and contribute, something I wasn't entirely sure they're going to do. But man, I agree with you. Those rookies, I'm super proud of them. And the last thing I'll say on those guys is watching how they worked. There is a small part of me, and don't take this to the bank, but there is a small part of me that kind of almost sort of doesn't want Brent Grimes back. Like, I liked what I saw out of these guys. There's a part of me that's ready to just let them take control, let them take their lumps if they're going to get it. They'll gel, they'll keep getting better, and they'll set us up, as the season goes forward, and certainly in seasons before. That said, I can't wait to see Brent Grimes come back because, the veteran presence, he certainly, I think, is still probably the best corner on the team, provided Father Time, has not finally caught up with him.
No, I understand what you're saying. I mean, we haven't seen Brent play this year, so we don't know where his bar is at. So it's sort of an easy decision to say, well, these guys aren't costing us games, and they're young, and I want to get them playing experience. So if Brent doesn't come back and we continue to put up 40 points a game, I'm okay with it.
See, I'd rather have this conversation on this side of the ball than the one that's dominating when that guy comes back. Is he going to replace the guy who's performing well that's on the other side of the ball? This one's more fun to me.
Yeah, well, yeah. And because it's not going to happen. But, like you mentioned, I put out the DAX stats today. It's pinned to my Twitter account if you're interested to go see that. I also I think I forgot to pin the how the scoring works, but it's down. It's in there, and I'll redo it and pin it up there. But while I was watching that, there were just like 5 or 6 things that sort of popped out that I was like, that's a little interesting tidbit that I think we should talk about.
Okay.
The first thing, and I've mentioned to you off the air, was how shocked I was that the first time the Bucs ran the ball, which is actually their second possession because we all know what happened, the first play of the game, was a handoff to Sean Wilson, the kickoff returner. And that was his only touch of the game, and he went for 9 yards. But, I don't understand. I mean, he did a good job. I mean, it's not a bad play call, but I don't understand what the Bucs were seeing going out there basically for their first possession and having Rondé Barber and Quiz Rogers on the bench and Wilson in there. It must have been something they saw in that one play that, the Philly defensive line or linebackers or corners were doing, that they thought Sean Wilson gave him the best bet to gain yards of the play. And they were right. He went for 9.
Yeah. That's one of those things, if we had our in-season media credentials, that'd be one of the questions I'd want to ask Dirk Cutter or Todd Monken if we got to talk to him, because Peyton Barber was in on that very first play. In fact, he made a very key block. Like, it's not like he screwed up in that first play. So what was it that made them say, okay, let's put Sean Wilson in? And, oh, by the way, Sean Wilson went 1 for 9 in the game, meaning that was his only carry. Was there ever a thought to, he went for 9 yards on 1 carry. Like, let's give him another shot. Let's see what else, I mean, I know Peyton Barber is our number 1 guy, and I'm 100% riding behind that. But, just kind of getting some insight into that coach's mind of how they're rotating those guys out. I'd be real interested to know what that was.
Yeah, I'm not really big into, well, he got 9, let's get him the ball again, type of deal. I just kind of, I like, you sort of finish off your statement there. It's like, I want to know what you saw to put him in basically the second play of the game and then give him the ball. That's what I found more interesting. But I don't want anyone to think that, okay, Sean Wilson got a carry, so now he's a better back than Rojo. Like it's still status quo. And if Rojo can get to the point where Jacquizz Rodgers can block as a third down back and picking up blitzing linebackers and cornerbacks or helping out on ends, when that gap closes enough where his obvious running the ball talent is way above Rodgers, so when that all starts to balance out, that's when Rojo will be activated. And once again, the only reason Sean Wilson is being activated is because he returns kickoffs. It's not because he's a better back than Ronald Jones, or the Bucs thinks he's a better back than Ronald Jones, I guess I should say. But on that same drive, we both saw it, but it just went. It didn't end up being a big play. The Bucs ended up punting. I think they almost went 3 and out on that second series. They might have picked up a first down, but when Ryan Fitzpatrick rolled out to our side, which would have been the top of the screen if you're watching on TV, and then when he got pressured, he turned real quickly and fired it back to Peyton Barber, but he sailed it over his head, and he had blockers out in front of him and clear. Like they didn't even have anybody to block. It was just one more thing of this wrinkle of this offense and the way that Todd Monken has a feel on the game where he was taking advantage of the Eagles' over aggressiveness, especially after, they get that long touchdown. And I think that play would have went, I don't want to say it went to the house, but it would have been a first down easy, probably across the 50. And, the Bucs could have been rolling there, but Fitzpatrick held on the ball for a touch too long, and like I said, overthrew him. But it was one of those plays where, like, wow, that was a great play design. That was a great call. That really would have worked. It was just, execution.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, just because this has kind of reared its head in social media, and I kind of got into it with somebody earlier this week. Speaking about Peyton Barber, so far over 2 games, he's averaging right around 2 yards a carry. Right. A little bit less, I think, actually. Now, what I don't want to do is I don't want to slip into this whole Doug Martin thing, because we've been around this train. Oh, it's the O-line's not blocking, or they're great at pass protection, but they're not run blocking, or he's dancing behind, or whatever.
This is an easy explanation.
Yes, please, thank you.
Okay, it's because the Bucs have been in the lead the first 2 games, and when it gets about halfway through the fourth quarter, they're trying to run the ball, and both the Saints and the Eagles are sending, they're putting 8 in the box and sending 9. Right. And that's where Peyton Barber's losing a yard, 2 yards, only getting a yard. Watch Peyton and it was almost the exact same type of running game. Watch Peyton Barber in the first half. He was doing fine, and then they switched to Jacquizz for some reason, who did okay. I mean, he did a lot better in this game against Philly than he did in New Orleans. In New Orleans, it was almost like I understand why he's on the field. Use him as a 6th offensive lineman and let the tight end go out, and you can get 4 out and have not have max protect, but still have really good protection. Right. And he's doing that wonderfully and allowing these 4 guys to get out. I understand why he's in. Just don't give him the ball, because when you give him the ball, he's getting 1 yard. And, I don't care if you think you're trying to keep him honest or whatever. It's just not working out. Now, this game, they did the same thing, and he actually picked up some yards, got a first down on the ground at one point on third down, which is a playmaker play. Where am I going with this? Oh, but when they ran at Philadelphia in the first half, Barber was 6 yards, 9 yards, 8 yards. When they tried to go around the outside in the first half, it just wasn't happening. Philly's defense was too fast, and they were penetrating too easily. And that's when Barber was getting -2, -3 yards. And then when the second half rolled around, the Bucs, especially on that last drive, or when we were trying to run the clock out, they were just diving in the middle. Plus, Peyton Barber had some runs on the goal line where those are real tough yards. So if you're a box score scout, and like you said, you look at it, he has how many carries? 19 carries, 20 carries, 2.2 yards or 2.1 yards, whatever it is. You can be like, holy cow, Oh, I think I remember the tweet. That guy was like, "Holy cow, look at these stats! It's Rojo time."
Right.
And you were like, "Don't know what you're talking about because you don't watch the game."
Exactly. You don't watch the games. You didn't watch practice. You don't know what's going on. No.
Yeah.
And then it's
and that's it. And it really, it's that simple. It is really that simple. Now, Dirk Cutter, yes, he wants to run the ball better, especially when if you put 8 guys in the box, like he says, you got to make somebody miss. You still have to execute.
Right.
But those odds aren't good for running the ball. And no team in the NFL is going to rush for 100 yards on 10 carries. 15 carries with those kind of fronts. It's just not going to happen. So that's why Peyton Barber's stats look so bad. It's because the second half of games, because the offense is doing so well, and they're up. But we're up by 24 against the Saints, and we were up 20 against the Eagles.
Yeah,
both in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, listen, the only time that I'm going to start being worried about the running back situation and all of that is when we start losing or we start averaging under 20 points scored in a game. Outside of that, and this, I mean, that same philosophy, I think, to me, kind of applies to Cam Brate. A lot of people talked about, the fact we didn't even target Cam Brate, and he's got 0 catches, and he just signed this big contract, and blah 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 blah. Look, personally, as far as, and I've not talked to the man, I don't know, but I'm gonna bet that Cam Brate doesn't give a flying rip how many catches he's had. The team's winning, and he's good to go.
And he's got $8 million.
Right. So I think he's okay. I don't think he's I don't think he's hurting over there. But I mean, kind of the same thing with this whole pseudo running back controversy that really isn't a controversy, or at least it shouldn't be. Listen, I'm not even going to worry about it until the team, starts struggling.
Until you need the running game to win you a game and it's not there, it's
right.
not news yet.
Exactly.
It's just not. And
until we need the running game to win us a game, and we see what running game they put on the field in that point. You know what I mean? Like, because you could say I think that to sum up what you were saying, the running game that we have seen so far is not their gung-ho, put everything on the line kind of a running game that we've seen so far. Does that make sense?
No, but I know what you're trying to say.
You know what I'm trying to say?
Well, and it's because the offense is balanced. We've always talked about how Dirk Cutter's offense runs off the play action. Well, guess what? When Monken calls it, it doesn't. Mm-hmm. It's when you're growing up as a pitcher in baseball, like Little League, you throw the fastball to set up the curveball. Then when you get in the majors, it switches. Mm-hmm. You throw a lot of junk, you throw the curve, and then that's when the fastball come in and it's like, oh, geez, fastball, and they can't catch up to it. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like the way this offense now. We throw the ball. Like, we're a pass-first offense, and the run's like a pop and a surprise instead of like, we're going to shove it down your throats, mm-hmm. and right when your safeties start to come up to try to stop, we're going to throw over your heads. Right. This year, they're like, hey, who's one-on-one? You are. Go deep. I'll hit you. And they're doing it time after time after time after time.
Yeah. Take advantage of those mismatches because with all of those weapons, it's what we were saying last year. Who are you going to cover with all these weapons?
Right.
We're forcing them into those kinds of situations. So, all right, man, you got any other final thoughts before we move on to grades?
Yeah,
all right.
I've got like 4 or 5.
Awesome.
Could try to get rid of me, Brent. On the Phillies' first touchdown drive, which tied it up 7-7, Chris Conte was all over the field. And I was really shocked that after I'm sorry.
He was all over the field, like in a good way or in a not so good way?
What's the not so good way? When have you ever heard that reference in a not so good way?
I've heard it referenced in regards to Chris Conte. Let's put it that way. Chris, he didn't know where he was supposed to be, or
he's all over the place.
Yeah, he's all over the place. In
a good way.
Tackle. Okay.
And I wanted to start something last week, but I really wasn't sure I was going to do it technically, and now I've sort of jerry-rigged some stuff. Last week, what I wanted to do on Twitter on Wednesday, which is when most people will be hearing this, unless you stay up till midnight and download it. I want to go through the. What's 2?
No, 2 a.m., not midnight. It's 2 a.m. before the show goes out. Sorry, go ahead.
Fair enough. Peace. I'm out of here. I wanted to show Ryan Jensen's like play-by-play from the All-22 and cut it up and put it like in a Twitter thread.
Sure.
And I was like, I didn't get it done. I'm like, okay, I'll do it this week because it'll be a much better defensive line. and we can really see what we got. But as I'm watching this game and watching Chris Conti, I'm like, I have to do Chris Conti. Like, I have to do this.
Sure.
And I was really shocked that I only got 1 point in my DAC stats, but you'll see tomorrow. You'll see Wednesday, but I think Chris Conti had a really good game for the time he was in there, and especially on that first TD drive, which is sort of ironic, but I guess kind of makes Chris Conti Chris Conti. What a great series by Chris Conti, and the Bucs give up a touchdown.
Right.
But that's just, that's how it was. Nobody was stopping anybody, and it looked like he was the only player out there making plays. But the plays that he made just weren't, registering in the playmaker plays for defense. Something I've noticed through the first 2 games is the Bucs, when they're driving the ball, like when they're scoring, they don't go get to third down like almost ever. Like, it's first down, it's a runner or pass, and it's like second and 6, second and 4, and then it's a first down. And then next thing it's like second and 3, and it's a first down. It's just something to sort of look at and pay attention to, because, and I know I keep referencing DAC stacks, that's sort of how I see these things. If you get a first down on third down, it's worth an extra point. You get a point for the first down, but it happened on third down. That's, that's a playmaker. You move the chains on third down, big deal. But it doesn't happen a lot with our offense, because they're getting first downs on second downs. And that one's no good.
Now, with that, can bounce off of that. Sure. One thing that I've noticed, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if you look back over the last 2 games, you look at the difference in the score, and not necessarily the final score, but if you look at, through the majority of the game, like through the majority of the Saints game, we were up almost 3 scores. Until kind of right there at the very
majority,
end.
but yeah,
you know what I mean.
Looked up 1 point in the third quarter, and we're up 24, and the Saints only have 24 points.
Exactly. And then with the Eagles game, we were certainly up.
27-7.
Yeah, exactly. But when you look at that, like, what would almost betray that is the time of possession. Like, we have held the ball less on time of possession, and usually, at least to me, If you get time of possession, you win time of possession of the ball, you're generally coming out on top. You generally have more points. But that's not the case.
If it's a big difference.
Yeah.
Like if it's under 5 minutes, I don't really think that stat holds up. But if it's something like what the Bucs are doing, where they're like, it's such a huge difference for the opposition, and we're still winning, like that doesn't correlate.
Right. So it's just, I don't know that there's any big revelation or anything. It's just a kind of turning that whole idea on its head. And I think it just talks about how efficient this Buccaneers offense has been over the first 2 games with their time. And to even further solidify that, you look at this Eagles game alone, our defense played 50% more snaps than the offense did. The offense played 50, the defense played 75, like exactly, which is kind of weird. I like it when numbers get round like that.
Math is easy.
Yeah, it makes math real easy. But when you're playing that many more snaps, on defense, that's not usually a good thing. Like we saw our defense out there getting tired. Usually that's an indication you're about to lose the game. And I'm not faulting the defense for that. They God bless their souls. It's 120 degrees down there. By the way, in case you're wondering, for as much as we've talked about how hot it was, on the field, they're saying it was 120 degrees.
Yeah, I heard that.
That's crazy. But those guys were out there toughing it out, man, and that is something else. And to get the limited injuries that we did, I think is also pretty impressive. Anyway, back to your
two things to bounce off that. One, it sort of goes back to the point I just made about how the Bucs don't go to third down a lot.
Yep.
And that's why, because they're moving the chains quickly and getting down the field. It's going quickly. Now, I don't know if a lot of people probably don't remember this, but O.J. Howard's touchdown drive was a one-play drive as well. Like, we got the ball.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it was one play. Got the ball, throw it to Howard, crossing pattern, gets the edge, touchdown. Like we only had the ball one play, first play. So, that goes into it a lot. But I guess the last thing I wrote down here, because I was a big proponent or I guess detractor from this, but after being at that game and with that stat you just said about how hot it was, I'm not really minding the white shirts at home right now.
We talked about that a little bit there at the game, that, you know, truth be told, at that heat, it's hot no matter what color you're wearing. Like, it is boiling hot. But I mean, you know, when you talk about it, this is a game of inches. It's the small little things that add up.
Edges.
Yeah, that competitive edge. You force that other team to be in a dark colored jersey. You know, it's something small. I mean, that's almost equivalent to what you were saying last week's show about how Bill Belichick has only ever had left-footed punters.
Right.
You know, does it really make that much of a difference? Probably not, but you know, it's a little thing, and you know, they go with it. I would just like to see them. They can wear white tops. I don't mind that. Just wear the pewter pants with them. That outfit looks so much better when they do it that way. But you know, yeah, white on white.
I don't mind the white on white. I mind wearing not red at home, but once again, like,
yeah.
After Sunday's game, I'm like, well, maybe you're onto something. Because I was wearing all black because I was wearing the PewterCast shirt, and you know, whatever. It was hot, as we said like 4,000 times, and I apologize. And I was going to skip this one, but this is the last one. I'm going back to it. There would have been some guys that scored better in the system that came up with big third down stops, but since Philly went for it like fourth down 5 times,
wow,
those stops don't count.
Okay,
you know.
Yeah.
So if you stop on third down and it's like 4th and 1 and they go for it and make it, that third down stop doesn't count because you didn't get the ball back. You didn't make them punt.
Right.
You know?
It's not a turnover at that point.
Yeah, it's not a mini turnover. So I just want to throw that out there because there were some really nice athletic plays that Chris Conte made, Jordan Whitehead made, that in normal, if the score was closer, if the other team was winning, would have counted as playmaker plays.
Sure.
So,
all right.
But that's all I got as far as final thoughts.
All right. I got one final thought, and then we're going to get to grades.
Okay.
And I think I caused a little bit of controversy with this earlier in this week, but I don't care. It's just how I personally feel about it.
You are not going to do this wide receiver thing again, are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I said after the Saints game that for this defense, that I don't trust them enough to hand them the lead and expect them to hold the lead at the end of the game. Like, if I'm the offense, I'm thinking,
took crap for that?
Do what?
You took crap for that?
I've taken a little bit of crap for it. And you know, this and people are but the defense and this, all of that's true. You know, they're playing their rookies, and I understand all of this. I'm just saying, if I'm the offense, I'm thinking we've got to be up by 2 or 3 scores always, because I just don't trust them to hold the lead. Like, you know, give them that cushion.
And they didn't either.
And they didn't. Game. Right. Now, that said, I'm still there. I still, you know, after game 2, I still don't want to hand the defense the game and expect them to hold on to the lead. Because, by the way, the impetus for this comes out of last year specifically, where how many times did we see Jameis hand the defense the lead? Like, Jameis had the lead, right? And the offense had the lead. It was the last possession of the game. They handed the ball over to the defense, and the defense couldn't hold. And we wound up losing the game. Or
we're down by, you know, 2 points, 5 points, 6 points, and we need a stop.
Right.
And the other team went down and scored, and now we're down, you know, 11, 12.
Yeah. So this is directly coming off of that from last season. I'm still in a spot where I'm not there yet. But after watching this game with the Eagles, I'm getting there. Like I'm coming along. I think I'm starting to trust this defense a lot more. And the idea that they might actually be able to hold somebody. I'm not there yet. I'm still saying I'm still holding on to the offense has to maintain a 2 or 3 possession score lead. But
that's such a lot.
What? I know.
That's like 17 points or 15 points.
No, at least 2, right?
No,
like
17.
8. No, they need
17.
at least 8. 9. They need at least 9, whatever it is. Like, a 9-point lead is a 2 possession. It's 9-point lead's a 2 possession.
A 2-score game.
Yeah.
A 2-score lead.
Yeah, I say 2 to 3 because we saw them go up to 48 points against the Saints, you know. But
they only gave up 40, Brent. Don't shut them short. Cut them short. No, but I'm right there with you, man. You know, it's it's something that I'm not ready to be like, oh, we'll stop them. Like, okay, this is good. Like they got to go 80 yards, no problem. Like we'll do something. I'm still in the fact, they got to go 80 yards. How much time is left?
Right.
Oh, can they do that?
I mean, proof positive. You get to the end of the Saints game, right, and all of a sudden you go, the score is 48-40. If they score and go for 2, I don't trust that the defense can. I mean, this game's going to go to a tie. Like that's what I really thought was going to happen with the Saints, was the game was going to go to a tie. With the Eagles game, they came up and we missed the extra point. And I tweeted out, I was like, if this game comes down to a freaking missed extra point kick, I'm going to lose it, because we were 27-21, right? And just sitting there, just going, is this defense going to hold? That one more. Are they going to be able to march down and get that? Like that was in the back of my head, and I was really, really glad that they didn't. But had we not had that extra cushion of multiple possessions, multiple scores, then I don't know that we would have. Ren, for the sake of time, let's go ahead and get to our grades for this game. How do you grade out this team? Offense, defense, special teams, and then the team as a whole.
Offense, I'm giving them a B minus.
Really?
I talked about this because they shot themselves in the foot a lot.
Okay.
The Ryan Jensen penalty. The before that throwback I talked about with Fitzpatrick to Barber. Before that, there was a false start on Beninock.
Right.
Sean Wilson runs from 9 yards, false start. I think they ran it for something or other, and it was 3rd and 8, and they tried that across the field screen pass, which would have worked, but it didn't. So they shot themselves in the foot. The Ryan Jensen penalty ended a drive, shot ourselves in the foot in our own end, by the way, and we're only winning by 7. So I wasn't happy, but I wasn't happy about that so much. Mike Evans, if he had the first down. I'm not mad that he tried to get the extra yardage, but if he would have hung onto the ball, we were already in field goal range. Felt like we were going and score, at least have a field goal attempt. That would have capped the game. Fumbled the ball. OJ Howard fumbled the ball. So I'm giving them B minus because they shot themselves in the foot. And even if it was Philadelphia giving 3 and outs on those possessions, it would still be a B minus, because then I would flip the script and say, well, we put up 4 touchdowns against them.
Right.
It was a really good defensive effort, but when push came to shove, we went down the field and scored. So yeah, I'm giving it a B minus because, I felt there was too many mistakes in the football game, especially the first half. The defense, I'm also giving a B minus. It would be a little lower. I think early in the game, on that drive where Philly was 3rd and 41, the Bucs weren't stopping Philly.
Right.
They were stopping themselves. Like they were gutting the Bucs up the middle on the run. They were moving the ball down the field, but they kept shooting themselves in the foot. Quan was all over the place in a bad way on the first couple drives, and then he really settled down. Obviously getting points for the strip sack, and he made quite a few tackles for loss. He had a really good game, but early he was blowing by people, missing tackles, people putting on the brakes, and he's flying by like the 9:30 train to Boston. And like you said, even though they're out there, it was a hot day, they're out there a long time. Well, so was Philly's defense,
right.
And
so was Philly's offense.
Yeah. So was Philly's offense, and they stopped them 2 times on 4th down. And they went for a lot on 4th down. You were in the 4th quarter. I think it was the 4th quarter. Maybe it might have been right before. I think they scored right at the end of the 3rd. So, just about 15 minutes left to play, and you have a 3-score lead. And by the end of the game, the team has the ball with a chance to win. So that all goes in sort of my B minus. The offense did him no favors, but that goes into my B minus. And the special teams, man, it would be a D for that mix. Yeah, you just got to make your kicks. You just got to make your kicks. But when we needed it, Ryan Smith came up big, pinned him deep with 30 seconds left and no timeouts. That was big. The punt before that, Ryan Smith As soon as the guy caught the ball, he tackled him. I thought the coverage was really good on the punts. Kickoffs, Catanzaro sort of kicked it to the end zone, so no big deal. So I'm giving him a C, and it's all because of Catanzaro. I mean, it should be higher. If he would have made his extra point, I probably would have given the special teams an A.
Right.
But, points are points, and that really hurts him.
Yeah. I mean, it gave us a scare at the end. Yeah, it actually gave the Eagles a chance to win the game at the end of the game, which fortunately they didn't. So it does matter. As far as grades for me, I'm going a little bit of a different approach with the offense than you. I'm actually giving them an A.
Really?
I am. And here's the reason why, because I hear what you're saying about all those mistakes and how they shot themselves in the foot. And you're absolutely right. And maybe I'd need to go back and rewatch this yet again. But the mistakes didn't stand out to me as much as
the 275-yard bombs.
Yeah, I mean it's the way they played outside of that. So I did not think that this was as dominant as a performance as we saw in New Orleans, but that was that kind of a game in New Orleans is it's a better defense, and those games don't come along all the time. 27, and I said before the season started, I think this Buccaneers offense is going to average about 27 points a game. I did not necessarily think that it was going to come off of 4 touchdowns, but so they're right there where I thought they were going to be. Beninock especially, I thought, had his struggles. If you had to name a player on the offense who had an off game, Beninock did, but my God, he's going against Fletcher freaking Cox.
And they left him one-on-one a lot.
A lot.
Did. That's where that first sack came from. Oh, look, Fletcher Cox against Beninock early in the game.
Right.
What's going to happen? And it's like putting Gerald McCoy against any guard.
Yeah.
And Beninock's and he's not even all pro. He's a 4th round, first year starter against. If in my mind, if there was nobody named Aaron Donald, Cox is the best DT in the league to me. So I mean, I'm not shocked. I'm not happy about it, but it's like leaving Beninock 1-on-1 against Fletcher Cox. What do you think was going to happen?
Right, exactly. So, I'm not holding that necessarily against them a lot, but it's not an A+ performance for me like it was last week. But I did still think it was a very, very good offensive performance. I thought it was even more than above average. So I give them an A. And like I said, the mistakes just did not stand out to me as much. The defense, though, I am right there with you. I have a B-. And, I was kind of saying my grades go C. You get a C if you do what we expect you to do. And you get a B if you go above, and you get an A if you really, go even above that. So this defense, to me, they did more than what I honestly expected them to do. I still think it was a very average performance overall. This is a middle of the road NFL defense right now. But that said, they stepped it up from week 1, which was a D. We gave them a D in week 1. And I think in week 1, you probably, if you had to rank them, they were in the bottom, maybe 3rd of the league as far as defense goes. And now they're kind of, I think, in the middle of the pack, that 13 to 20 somewhere. And I hope to continue to see them climb. And I don't know. There's a piece of me that thinks that they will. I feel like this defense is on the upswing, and it's only going to get better. So, but for me, for this game, it was a B-. Special teams, I'm right there with you. It was a C. They kind of did mostly what I expect, and I don't mean that Catanzaro missed a kick, because I did not expect him to miss, especially a free point, an extra point. But he missed that kick. However, Ryan Smith, I thought, had a stellar game, and those two things, Ryan Smith was better than I thought he was going to be. Catanzaro missed the kick, so that's worse than I thought it was going to be. Those things kind of wash, so it just stays at a C, if that makes sense. And then if I put it all together, to me, that gives the whole team a B. You might even give them a B+. Give them a little extra just for the win in that very first play, 75-yard bomb. You might bump it up to a B+, but I give them at least a B for this game.
Yeah, I didn't give my final, and I'm giving them a B+. And once again, that was my fault. Once again, I don't think if you take what I gave the offense, defense, and special teams and grade it out and give the mean average,
right.
B+. But the win is what takes it over, and the offense for the most part looked really good, and the defense for the most part played really well, especially with the back half of the defense they had.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why we separate those out, the whole team grade versus the individual units, is honestly the whole team is greater than the sum of its parts. So those two don't necessarily average out. So, all right, Ren. Well, that is going to do it for this episode of the Pewtercast. Once again, I want to say thank you to Pat Donovan for joining us in this episode. I want to say thanks to a couple new patrons who have joined us, Ren. To Jim, to Brad, and to Sean, our new Patreon supporters.
3 more?
3 more, yeah. And if you guys want to find out about these guys and find out what they've discovered, this growing community of supporters of the show, go over to patreon.com/thepewtercast. You can sign up for a small recurring monthly donation. There's different levels, and depending on the level you pick, you get different kickbacks. So you guys go over there, you can check that out. Ren, where can the fine folks out there find you on the internet?
Best way and easiest way is to find me on Twitter at Rendaxt, REN_DAXT. I'm always down to talk Buccaneers football.
And if you guys want to get a hold of me, I am at Brent Allen Live across all the social medias. And if you want to get a hold of the show, you can find us at The Pewtercast on Twitter, at facebook.com/ThePewtercast, or shoot us an email to thepewtercast@gmail.com. Speaking of emails, Ren, we've got several that have come in this week. So you folks out there, you be listening. We're going to have another show. The second half of this show has come out here in just a day or so, where, Ren, we're going to go through. We've got a couple new iTunes reviews. We've got some social media stuff and these emails for our fellow fans' final thoughts on the Eagles game. Until then, guys, go Bucs.
Pat Donovan for president.